Okay, here we go. We're going to continue lesson 7.3. I'm on the second example from Unlock the Problem, where it says strategies for multiplying and dividing with 5. Okay, so you've learned how to use doubles to multiply. Now you'll learn how to use doubles to divide by 5. All right, so what these strategies are is a way to think it through in your mind, maybe without a picture, without a number line, without skip counting, but kind of just like a mental math reasoning of how to multiply with fives or even divide with fives. Okay, so the first lock is talking about how to multiply with fives using kind of like a trick. So what you can do is use tens facts and then take half of that to multiply with 5. So here are the steps. When one factor is 5, you can use a tens fact. So let's pretend we're trying to figure out what 5 times 2 is. Now, I know a lot of you know 5 times 2, but let's just pretend we're trying to figure out a fact that has a 5, and we're doing multiplication. What you could do is first multiply that number by 10 instead of 5, because that you're very good at shortcuts, right? 10 you can do super fast in your mind. So 10 times 2, you know right away, is 20. But now remember, I wasn't really multiplying by 10. My real problem was supposed to be multiplying by 5. And 5 is half of 10. So I was only supposed to have half the number of groups than I do when I have 10 groups. Okay, so with my answer here, I'm going to also take that answer and cut it in half to get my real answer. So my 20 that I got, I'm going to divide that in half or divide it by 2. And 20 divided by 2, you learned on the first lesson of our chapter here, is if you take it and split it in half or split it apart, what is the double that makes 20? Well, 10 plus 10 makes 20. So 20 divided into 2 groups is 10. So 5 times 2 is 10. Now I'm going to have us do another example of that trick just so we can see that trick with maybe a little bit of a harder problem. So let's try 5 times 7 this time, okay? So that, I don't know right away off in the top of my mind maybe, and maybe you don't either. Actually, I really do know that answer, but maybe you don't, okay? So instead of doing 5 times 7, let's double the 5 and make it a 10. Okay, and do 10 times 7. Well, you know 10 times 7 off the top of your head very fast. So 10 times 7 is 70. You just add that 0 to the other factor. But now remember, I'm not really supposed to have 10 groups of 7. I'm only supposed to have half of them. I'm supposed to have 5 groups of 7. So take your answer that you have here, and we're going to divide it in half or divide it by 2. Okay. Now, if I divide 70 in half, now this did get a little bit more challenging, but I'm going to think of numbers I would double to get 70. Let me start with some bigger numbers. 25 plus 25 is 50, so I have to keep going up. What about 30 plus 30? 30 plus 30 is 60. What about 35 plus 35? 35 plus 35 is 70. So 70 cut in half would be 35. So that would be a trick that you could do when you're multiplying by 5. You can instead do it by 10 first, and then just take that answer and cut it in half. Okay, now let's go to the second lock. What are some tricks that we could do if we wanted to divide by 5? So same thing. Instead of dividing by 5, first divide by 10, and then you're going to double it. Okay, so let's see the steps. When the divisor is 5 and the dividend is even, so your dividend has to be even to do this trick, you can use a tens fact. Okay, so here's our problem. 30 divided by 5. I'm trying to figure out what that is, but that's kind of hard for me to do unless I do skip counting by 5. But let's see if I can figure out, like, maybe instead of skip counting lots of times, let's see if I can figure out a faster trick here. So instead of dividing by 5, let's see if we can divide by 10. And you guys know this trick easily now. 30 divided by 10, you just take away that 0. Remember from yesterday? That would be 3. But remember, we're not supposed to be really dividing it into 10 groups. We're actually supposed to just be dividing it into 5 groups. So 5 groups would actually be you're taking it and you're making your groups bigger, right? So we need double that. Okay, so we take this answer, and instead of just having 3, we're going to do it another set because our answer is going to have more inside of those groups. So 3 plus 3, we have to double it, and that will give me 6. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. Now let's do another example of that over here. So let's do another dividend. Maybe it's going to be 20 divided by 5. So what will we do first? Well, like it says, instead, just divide 20 divided by 10 first. And you guys can do that in your head. It's 2. Okay, but remember, I'm not really supposed to be breaking my 20 down into all of those teeny tiny groups, like 10 groups, and they're going to be little tiny groups. I really am supposed to have 5 groups. So there's going to be more inside of those groups because there's only 5 groups. So the groups can be bigger. So I'm taking this number and I'm going to double it to make it so that more fit inside my bigger groups. So really, it would be 4. And is 20 divided by 5 4? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop this video and I'll start a new one for the Sharon Show.